funding during September to help those who have not been very successful during the annual funding and who have not had a good transaction, and to give them another chance. And this is, I think, what we ought to help students to achieve their goals.
Yes. Do you feel as though that there should be limitations on the appropriations in which one organization should receive?
Yes, I do, because as SGA, the reason why we have a finance committee is to tell people that we want to allocate this money wisely, and to allocate this money wisely, and we have rules and whatnot to regularize what we should fund, what we should not fund. I think this is why we have a finance committee. If not, we can just allocate the student activity fund however we want to. But that being said, I think with reasonable activities, I think I don't see why not. We should give them the money they possible.
Thank you. Moving on to the second round of questions.
You spoke of this, and as financial vice president, a great deal of your time is spent on spot funding. What standards could you see setting that would be fair and equitable to all spot funding bills?
Amy Winters.
Okay, currently, spot funding is for quote-unquote unforeseen circumstances, and I think it's fair in a way that if you don't see things that's going on and you ask for extra money, that is fine. But I think that with the current trend is more people complain about what money they don't get from finance committee, from the senators. Senators will take a vote on if they want to give that money allocated. If I were going to get elected, I would like to tell my senators that we have, as I said, we have a finance committee for a reason, and that we would like the senators to be more educated on how much money we have, how much money the student organizations deserve to have. Thank you.
Yes. How will you deal with the controversial situations where a president has been set in previous administrations for spot fundings?
Can you extend it a little bit?
Currently in SGA, a lot of spot fundings are based upon what happened in previous years with that organization or within previous administrations within student government. A lot of times the financial vice president was not the financial vice president previously, so they have to explain why the president is set and why the standards are set. How would you deal with this if you were selected to be the financial vice president?
I've talked to current Vice President Perdue about this, and as the same thing as SGA, we do go through transactions as student organizations, but if there are things that I see is unfair or I think should be changed, we'll talk about it within the senators, we'll talk about it within the finance committee, and we'll vote on it. And if there's something that the SGA thinks should be changed, I'm open to anything. Thank you.
Thank you. Robert, you will now answer the original question.
As the financial vice president, you spend a great deal of time on spot funding bills throughout the school year. What standards would you see setting to make sure that all spot funding bills are fair and equitable?
Thank you. As the current system holds, spot funding is for unforeseeable costs, like Ms. Wang just quoted. As a member who has gone up for spot funding this year, I understand what it feels like to be towards the end of the year and you have a great idea, you have costs that have come up that you could not have seen in the annual budget. Now, the annual budget, as we discussed earlier, is fair. If you're going to argue that it's not fair for a group to plan a year in the head, then you need to come back to the real world. Anywhere you go, any company, groups have to plan for an entire year for their budget. But now, if you come up with a great idea in the middle of the year and it's not unforeseen, that's why I have the proposed special project fund, which I will continue Vice President Perdue's initiative, so the groups who have great ideas that will benefit the student body can come forward and request funding.
Did you have a follow-up?
Yes. How would you deal with the controversial situations where president has been set from previous administrations in terms of spot funding bills?
Well, unfortunately, there are way too many guidelines that are not set in stone. Guidelines that if you ask the Finance Committee or Vice President Perdue, the answer may be, well, that's the way we've always done it. And for me, that's not acceptable. I plan on creating guidelines, especially with non-funded items, that are set in stone, that are law, so to speak, that they can be held to within the Finance Committee and within SGA. I plan on reviewing the guidelines so that we no longer look at what happened in the past and we look at what we do now, that we don't have to worry about precedent. Because because I would hate to not fund a group when another group has been funded for the same thing in the past. And to clear that up, you need to set specific guidelines that are reasonable and apply to this time, to this day and age, and in the next step for SGA.
Thank you. You will now both have the opportunity to ask one another a question. Amy, you have 30 seconds to ask Robert a question.
Okay, Mr. Bailey, and I want to start with what I said in my opening statement. I feel that there has been dishonesty and in a way that you still cut some of my competing ideas. I would like to ask, as a candidate for the financial vice president, how can you be a financial vice president who deals with money to be dishonest and has no dignity? Thank you.
Robert, you now have 1 minute to answer.
I would like to cite the rest of my executive board and president at our first ticket meeting in the fall before Christmas break, around November time, when we sat down and we discussed our platform points and what we planned on taking on as a ticket. One of my major platform points was transparency in the SGA budget and for the groups. If you'd like to speak with me or with the group about that afterward, that conversation did take place. So that has been our plan since November or December. And I do not plan to address such attacks on my character, but I do want you to know that has been in our plan since before Christmas break, and we plan on carrying that out.
Thank you. Robert, you now have 30 seconds to ask Amy a question.
Ms. Wang, under the remedies proposed restructuring of SGA, groups applying for funding will have to pass through the Finance Commission, 2 houses of representatives, and the veto power of the executive board. From an individual who is a proponent of groups easily receiving the resources that they need, won't this structure make it more difficult for funding to pass?
Amy, you have 1 minute to respond.
Okay, I would like to say I have not proposed the structure of how organizations have to go through the 3 process that you talked about. I would like to say it will continue the way that it has been for years and it has been right now, that they will go through the Finance Committee first, and I would like to, as I say in my opening statement, I would like to urge all my senators that we will allocate funds to special needs and will make special cases to different student groups. As I said, we're student servers, now student leaders. Thank you.
Thank you very much. That concludes the questioning for our financial vice president candidates.